The school of my grandson called to inform me that he had not attended classes for 2 weeks. I rushed to my son's house without warning, but when I arrived, I froze. The house was surrounded by police, and what they discovered soon became national news. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from. The call came on a Tuesday morning while I was kneading dough for my weekly bread baking. Mrs. Patterson from Riverside Elementary spoke in that clipped, professional tone school administrators use when they're annoyed but trying to hide it. "Mrs. Spencer, we're calling regarding your grandson, Trevor. He's been marked absent for 2 consecutive weeks now. We've tried reaching his parents multiple times, but all our calls go to voicemail." My hand stilled in the flour. 2 weeks? That can't be right. I spoke with my daughter-in-law just last Sunday. She said nothing about Trevor being ill. "We understand, Mrs. Spencer, but our attendance records are quite clear. We need a parent or guardian to contact us immediately, or we'll be required to file a report with Child Protective Services." The words hit me like cold water. Trevor was 8 years old, my only grandchild, the light of my life. 2 weeks absent, and no one had told me? I wiped my hands on my apron, my mind already racing. "I'll look into this right away," I promised, my voice steadier than I felt. After hanging up, I tried calling my son Marcus, straight to voicemail. Then his wife, Annette, the same electronic voice, cheerful and unhelpful. I stood in my kitchen in Cedar Falls, Iowa, staring at my phone, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest. Marcus worked as a senior financial analyst at Riverside Technologies, a software development company that had grown from a local startup to a regional powerhouse. He was meticulous, responsible. Missing 2 weeks of school for Trevor wasn't like him at all. Something was wrong. I'm 63 years old, and I've learned to trust my instincts. When my late husband Robert died 5 years ago, people treated me like I'd become fragile overnight, like aging somehow made me incapable. But grief had sharpened me, not dulled me. I'd managed our farm's finances for 40 years, raised 3 children, and navigated more crises than most people face in a lifetime. This felt different, though. This felt like danger. I changed out of my flour-dusted clothes, grabbed my purse and car keys, and headed for the door. Marcus and Annette lived 30 miles away in Riverside, in one of those new developments with cookie-cutter houses and manicured lawns. I'd make the drive and get answers myself. The November sky hung low and gray as I drove, threatening rain. Bare trees lined the highway like skeletal sentries. My mind kept circling back to that last Sunday phone call. Annette had seemed normal, maybe a bit distracted, but she often was. She worked part-time as a real estate agent and was always juggling showings and client calls. We'd talked about Thanksgiving plans, about whether I'd make my sweet potato casserole. She'd laughed at something Trevor said in the background. Had I missed something? Some tension in her voice? Some hidden meaning? I arrived at their subdivision just past noon. The houses all looked similar. Beige and cream vinyl siding with small front porches and attached garages. Marcus's house sat on a corner lot, distinguished by Annette's carefully maintained flower beds, now brown and dormant for winter. I pulled into the driveway and immediately noticed the newspapers. 3 of them, still in their plastic sleeves, scattered near the front door. My stomach dropped. I climbed out of my car and approached the porch, my sensible shoes clicking on the concrete. The doorbell echoed inside when I pressed it. No answer. I tried again, then knocked firmly. "Marcus? Annette? It's Mom. Are you home?" Silence. I tried the door handle. Locked. I walked around to the side gate, my heart pounding now. The backyard was empty, the patio furniture covered for winter. I cupped my hands against the sliding glass door and peered inside. The kitchen looked normal at first glance. Clean counters, dishes in the rack by the sink. But then I noticed the coffee maker, still half full with what looked like old, moldy coffee. On the kitchen table sat a laptop, closed, with a scattered pile of papers beside it. "Can I help you?" I spun around. A man in his 40s stood at the edge of the patio, regarding me with suspicious eyes. He wore a Riverside Police Department windbreaker. "I'm Ruth Spencer," I said quickly, my pulse racing. "This is my son's house. I'm worried about him and his family. They're not answering calls. and my grandson has been absent from school for 2 weeks. The officer's expression shifted slightly. Detective Ron Vasquez, he said, pulling out his badge. Ma'am, I need you to step away from the house. What's going on? Where's my son? That's what we're trying to determine. He gestured for me to follow him back toward the front yard. When was the last time you spoke with your son? Last Sunday. Well, I spoke with his wife. She said everything was fine. Detective Vasquez pulled out a notepad. And your son. When did you last speak directly with him? I had to think. Maybe 10 days ago? We usually talk on weekends, but he's been busy with a big project at work. Riverside Technologies? Yes. He's a senior financial analyst there. Why? What's happened? Before the detective could answer, 2 unmarked sedans pulled up to the curb. 4 people emerged, 3 men and 1 woman, all wearing similar windbreakers marked FBI in yellow letters. My blood ran cold. Mrs. Spencer, Detective Vasquez said gently, I'm going to need you to wait by your car. Don't leave, please. We'll have questions for you. FBI? I don't understand. Where is my son? We don't know, ma'am. That's the problem. I watched, numb with shock as the federal agents approached. The woman, tall with short gray hair, nodded to Detective Vasquez before turning her sharp gaze on me. Mrs. Spencer? I'm Special Agent Diana Fisher. Your son is currently a person of interest in a federal investigation. We have a warrant to search this property. A person of interest? Marcus? That's ridiculous. He's one of the most honest people I know. Agent Fisher's expression remained neutral, professional. We're investigating financial fraud at Riverside Technologies. Approximately $83 million has been embezzled over the past 18 months through a complex series of shell companies and falsified transactions. The trail leads directly to accounts your son had access to. The world tilted. $83 million. Fraud. It was impossible. There's been a mistake, I said firmly. My son would never— Ma'am, we're executing this warrant whether you believe it or not. Agent Fisher signaled to her team, and they moved toward the house with practiced efficiency. One of them produced a battering ram. Wait, I have a key. I fumbled in my purse. Marcus had given me a spare key years ago for emergencies. Please don't break down his door. Agent Fisher considered this, then nodded. I approached with shaking hands and unlocked the front door. The agent swept past me, and I stood on the threshold, watching strangers invade my son's home. Detective Vasquez stayed with me. Mrs. Spencer, I know this is difficult, but I need to ask you some questions. Has your son mentioned any financial troubles? Any unusual behavior lately? No, nothing. He seemed stressed about work, but that's normal. They've been developing some new software platform, and he said it was demanding. I watched an agent photograph the living room. Where's Trevor? Where's my grandson? We don't know. The school reported them missing yesterday, which triggered our investigation. We believe your son became aware of our inquiry and fled with his family. Fled? The word felt foreign, wrong. Marcus wouldn't run. If he knew about an investigation, he'd cooperate. He'd want to clear his name. Or he ran because he's guilty, Agent Fisher said, emerging from the hallway. She held up an evidence bag containing a thumb drive. Guilty people run, Mrs. Spencer. Innocent people answer questions. My hands clenched into fists. You don't know my son. Maybe you don't know your son as well as you think. I opened my mouth to argue, but movement inside the house caught my eye. Another agent was photographing the papers on the kitchen table. Through the doorway, I could see them more clearly now. Bank statements, printouts of transactions, handwritten notes in Marcus's familiar script. Agent Fisher followed my gaze. We'll be processing this scene for several hours. You can't stay here, Mrs. Spencer. Is there somewhere you can wait? We'll need to interview you formally. Interview me? I haven't done anything wrong. Neither has Marcus. Then you'll have no problem answering our questions. Her tone left no room for argument. Detective Vasquez touched my elbow gently. I can drive you to the station if you'd like, or you can follow in your own car. I stared at him, then back at the house. My son's house. Where was he? Where were Annette and Trevor? And why would the FBI think my honest, hard-working son had stolen $83 million? I'll drive myself, I said quietly. As I walked back to my car, my mind raced. This was wrong. All of it. I knew Marcus. I'd raised him, taught him right from wrong, watched him grow into a man of integrity. He'd been student council president in high school, had graduated summa cum laude from college, had never even gotten a speeding ticket. But someone had stolen that money. And if it wasn't Marcus, then who? And more importantly, who was trying to make it look like he had? I started my car, hands trembling on the wheel. Behind me, FBI agents swarmed over my son's house like ants. News vans were already pulling up to the curb. Someone had tipped off the media. This would be all over the local news by tonight, probably the national news by tomorrow. $83 million. It was the kind of number that made headlines, that ruined lives, that sent people to prison for decades. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Mom, don't trust anyone. I'm innocent. Protect yourself. Delete this." My breath caught. Marcus. It had to be Marcus. Before I could respond, the message deleted itself from my screen. I sat there, watching the FBI tear apart my son's life, holding a phone that no longer showed any proof he'd contacted me. Detective Vasquez was walking toward my car. I had perhaps 30 seconds to decide what to do. Tell them about the message, or keep it to myself. The detective knocked on my window. I looked up at him, schooled my expression into confused worry, and rolled down the glass. "Ready to head to the station, Mrs. Spencer?" I nodded, my mind already working. If Marcus was innocent, and I believed with every fiber of my being that he was, then someone was framing him. Someone with access to those accounts. Someone who knew how to make it look convincing. And if the FBI believed Marcus was guilty, they wouldn't be looking for the real culprit, which meant I would have to. I followed Detective Vasquez's sedan out of the subdivision, past the gathering news crews, past the neighbors standing on their porches whispering and staring. In my rearview mirror, I watched federal agents carry boxes of evidence out of my son's house. Somewhere out there, Marcus was hiding with his family, scared and desperate. And somewhere else, the real thief was probably watching this circus, satisfied that their scapegoat was taking the fall. I'd spent my life being underestimated. People saw a widowed grandmother and assumed I was simple, soft, easy to dismiss. They had no idea what I was capable of when someone I loved was in danger. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I was going to find the truth, expose whoever had framed my son, and bring my family home safely, even if I had to fight the FBI, the police, and half of Iowa to do it. The interview room at the Riverside police station smelled of stale coffee and fear. Agent Fisher sat across from me, a digital recorder between us, her eyes calculating and cold. "Let's start from the beginning, Mrs. Spencer. Tell me everything you know about your son's work at Riverside Technologies." I met her gaze steadily, my hands folded calmly in my lap, my expression that of a worried mother and nothing more. But inside, my mind was already 3 steps ahead, planning, calculating, preparing for the fight of my life. The interview lasted 3 hours. Agent Fisher asked the same questions in different ways, circling back, probing for inconsistencies. I stuck to the truth, or at least the parts of it I was willing to share. Yes, Marcus was my son. No, I didn't know anything about his work beyond general details. No, he'd never mentioned financial problems. No, I had no idea where he might have gone. I didn't mention the text message. That secret sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and hidden. When they finally let me go, it was nearly 4 in the afternoon. The parking lot was dark, clouds having delivered on their earlier threat of rain. I sat in my car for a long moment, exhausted, but knowing I couldn't afford to rest. My phone rang. Annette's mother, Carol Wright. "Ruth, I just saw the news. What on earth is happening? They're saying Marcus stole millions." I closed my eyes. "It's a mistake, Carol. Marcus didn't do this. But the FBI wouldn't investigate if there wasn't evidence. Where is he? Where's Annette and Trevor? I don't know. I'm trying to find out. This is insane. Annette would never be involved in something illegal. She's a good girl, a good mother." Carol's voice cracked. "I tried calling her all afternoon. Nothing. I know. I can't reach them either. What are we going to do? The question hung in the air. What could we do? Our children were fugitives, accused of a crime I refused to believe they'd committed. But belief wasn't evidence. Belief wouldn't convince the FBI or a jury. I'm going to find out what really happened, I said quietly. Someone set Marcus up. I'm going to prove it. Carol made a small, skeptical sound. Ruth, you're not a detective. Maybe we should hire a lawyer. Let professionals handle this. Lawyers cost money. Good ones cost a fortune. And right now, I need information more than I need representation. After we hung up, I started my car and headed not toward home but back toward Riverside. The FBI had cordoned off Marcus's house, but they couldn't stop me from asking questions. I needed to understand his work, his life, the people he'd trusted. Riverside Technologies occupied a modern glass building on the edge of town, all sleek angles and tinted windows. I'd been there once before, for a company holiday party. Marcus had been proud showing me around, introducing me to colleagues, pointing out the innovation labs and break rooms with their fancy coffee machines. Now, as I pulled into the visitor lot, the building looked different. Sinister, almost. Somewhere in those offices, someone had orchestrated a massive theft and made sure my son took the blame. The lobby was nearly empty at this hour. A security guard sat behind a curved desk, young and bored-looking until I approached. Then his eyes widened slightly. I'm sorry, ma'am, but we're not allowing visitors right now. Company policy during the investigation. Investigation? I made my voice confused, worried. What investigation? I'm here to pick up my son's personal items. Marcus Spencer. He asked me to collect some things from his office. The guard's expression shifted to pity, mixed with suspicion. Ma'am, I can't let you do that. Mr. Spencer's office has been sealed by federal agents. No one's allowed in. But surely his personal photographs, his coffee mug, those aren't evidence of anything. I'm sorry. I have strict orders. I nodded slowly, playing the confused elderly woman. I understand. Could I speak with his supervisor? Maybe they could help? The guard hesitated. Mr. Spencer's supervisor was Richard Caldwell, but he's not here today. Is he ill? No, ma'am. He's on administrative leave. Company orders. Interesting. What about human resources? Surely someone can help me understand what's happening to my son. Another hesitation. The guard glanced at his computer screen, then back at me. HR left for the day. Look, Mrs. Spencer. You are Mrs. Spencer, right? I nodded. I'm not supposed to say anything, but I worked with your son on a few projects. He was always decent to me, treated security staff like we mattered. I don't believe what they're saying about him. My throat tightened. Thank you. That means more than you know. But you should know, ma'am, the FBI isn't the only one looking for him. There have been other people asking questions. Private investigators, I think. And some folks who didn't look official at all. A chill ran down my spine. What kind of folks? The kind who make security guards nervous. 2 men, yesterday afternoon. They said they were reporters, but reporters don't usually wear shoulder holsters under their jackets. My hands went cold. Did you get their names? They didn't give any. Just asked if we knew where Marcus Spencer lived, if he had family in the area. The guard leaned closer, lowering his voice. I didn't tell them anything. But Mrs. Spencer, if your son is innocent like I think he is, he's in danger, from more than just the law. I thanked him and returned to my car, my mind racing. Armed men looking for Marcus. Private investigators. This was bigger than simple embezzlement. Someone wanted to make sure Marcus couldn't defend himself. I needed help, but who could I trust? The police were working with the FBI. A private investigator would be expensive and might report back to whoever was truly behind this. I needed someone smart, someone loyal, someone who knew how to find information without raising alarms. The answer came to me as I drove through Riverside's downtown area. I pulled over and dialed a number I hadn't called in years. Whitmore and Associates. This is Patricia. Patricia, it's Ruth Spencer. Is Thomas available? A pause. Mrs. Spencer? Yes. Let me check. Thomas Spencer was my late husband's nephew, a corporate lawyer who'd helped us with the farm's estate planning years ago. He was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, family. Aunt Ruth? Thomas's voice came on the line, concerned. I saw the news. Is it true? None of it's true. Marcus is innocent, Thomas. But he's in trouble. Real trouble. I need your help. Of course. Anything. What do you need? Information. I need to know everything about Riverside Technologies' financial structure. Who had access to the accounts Marcus managed? Who might benefit from him taking the fall for this theft? Thomas was quiet for a moment. That's going to require some serious digging. And Aunt Ruth, I have to tell you, if Marcus ran instead of facing charges, that doesn't look good. He ran because someone's trying to frame him. And I think they're trying to do more than just send him to prison. There are armed men looking for him. What? Thomas's voice sharpened. What kind of armed men? I don't know, but they're not law enforcement. Someone wants Marcus silenced. This is serious. You need to go to the FBI with this information. The FBI thinks Marcus is guilty. They won't protect him. They want to arrest him. I need someone on my side, Thomas. Please. I heard him exhale slowly. Okay. I'll start pulling corporate records, see what I can find. But Aunt Ruth, you need to be careful. If you're right about this, you could be putting yourself in danger. I'm 63 years old and I've weathered plenty of storms. I can handle myself. I'm sure you can. I'll call you tomorrow with what I find. After hanging up, I sat in my car watching the evening traffic pass by. Rain streaked the windshield. I felt the weight of exhaustion settling into my bones, but I couldn't go home yet. There was one more person I needed to talk to. Richard Caldwell, Marcus's supervisor, was on administrative leave, which meant he was either involved in the fraud or he knew something the company didn't want him sharing. Either way, he was my next lead. I found his address through a simple online search. People my age might seem technologically inept to younger folks, but I'd learned plenty from late-night internet research over the years. Caldwell lived in an upscale neighborhood, the kind with gates and carefully landscaped yards. His house was a 2-story colonial with dark shutters and a 3-car garage. Lights blazed from most of the windows. I pulled up to the curb, rehearsing what I'd say. I was just a worried mother seeking answers. Harmless, emotional, desperate. I rang the doorbell and waited. The man who answered was in his 50s, graying at the temples, wearing expensive casual clothes that screamed weekend golf and country clubs. His expression went from annoyed to wary when he saw me. Mr. Caldwell, I'm Ruth Spencer, Marcus's mother. I was hoping I could speak with you for a few minutes. I can't talk about the investigation, he said immediately, starting to close the door. I put my hand against it gently. Please. I'm not asking about the investigation. I'm asking about my son. You worked with him for 5 years. You know what kind of person he is. Caldwell hesitated, conflict playing across his features. Mrs. Spencer, I'm sorry about what's happening, but I can't get involved. I have my own career to think about. Did Marcus do this? Do you honestly believe he stole that money? It doesn't matter what I believe. The evidence can be fabricated, I interrupted. You're a smart man, Mr. Caldwell. You've worked in finance for decades. Do you really think my son could orchestrate something this sophisticated without anyone noticing? Or is it more likely that someone with deeper access and more experience set him up? His jaw tightened. You need to leave. Someone visited Riverside Technologies yesterday. 2 armed men claiming to be reporters. They were looking for Marcus. Does that sound like a normal investigation to you? Caldwell's face went pale. I don't know anything about that. But you know something. I can see it. Please, Mr. Caldwell. My grandson is 8 years old and he's missing. If you know anything that could help me find my family and clear Marcus's name, I'm begging you to tell me. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then he glanced over his shoulder into his house, checking if anyone was listening, and stepped out onto the porch, pulling the door mostly closed behind him. I can't give you details, he said quietly. But you're not wrong. Marcus didn't have the access or authority to move money the way it was moved. Those transactions required executive-level approval codes. My heart began to pound. Whose codes? I can't say. But if I were you, I'd look at who stood to gain from this. Riverside Technologies is being acquired by a larger firm. The deal was supposed to close next month. With $83 million missing and a fraud investigation ongoing, that acquisition is now in jeopardy. So, whoever stole the money wanted to stop the acquisition. Or maybe someone wanted the acquisition to fail so they could buy the company themselves at a reduced price. Caldwell's eyes met mine. I've said too much. I could lose everything if anyone knew I talked to you. I won't tell anyone, I promise. Your son was a good employee and a good man, Mrs. Spencer. I hope he's smart enough to stay hidden until this sorts itself out. He turned back to his door. Mr. Caldwell, one more question. Who put Marcus on administrative leave before all this happened? He paused, hand on the doorknob. He wasn't on administrative leave. Marcus resigned 3 weeks ago. Didn't he tell you? The door closed, leaving me standing on the porch in the rain, my mind reeling. Marcus had resigned? 3 weeks ago? But that didn't make sense. He'd never mentioned resigning. We'd talked about his work project just days before he disappeared. Why would he resign right before being accused of fraud? Unless he'd known something was coming. Unless he'd discovered the theft himself and resigned rather than be part of it. Or unless someone had forced him to resign to make him look guilty. I walked back to my car in a daze. Every answer led to more questions, but at least I was starting to see the shape of the conspiracy. This wasn't about Marcus stealing money. This was about something bigger. Corporate sabotage, a failed acquisition, powerful people protecting their interests. And my son was caught in the middle. I started the engine and pulled away from Caldwell's house. In my rearview mirror, I noticed a dark sedan parked 3 houses down, its engine running, windows tinted. As I turned the corner, it pulled out and followed. My hands tightened on the wheel. The armed men who'd been asking about Marcus at his office. Were they now following me? I turned randomly, testing. The sedan stayed behind me, keeping a steady distance. Not close enough to be obvious, but close enough to track where I was going. I couldn't lead them to my farm, to my home. I needed to lose them. My mind raced through options as I drove, the dark sedan a constant presence in my mirror. This was no longer just about proving Marcus's innocence. This was about survival. And I had a terrible feeling that things were about to get much worse. I drove through Riverside's downtown district, my heart hammering against my ribs. The dark sedan maintained its distance, professional and patient. Whoever was behind the wheel had done this before. Think, Ruth. Think. I turned into the parking lot of a large grocery store, one of those 24-hour places that was always busy. The sedan followed but hung back near the entrance. I parked and grabbed my purse, forcing myself to walk at a normal pace into the store. Inside, I moved quickly through the aisles, using the reflective surfaces of freezer doors to watch for anyone following. A man in a dark jacket entered 30 seconds after me. He picked up a shopping basket and pretended to browse, but his eyes tracked my movements. I ducked into the restroom, my mind racing. I couldn't stay here forever, but I needed a plan. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Found something. Call me when you're alone. Not now, I thought. First, I had to lose my tail. When I emerged from the restroom, I walked confidently toward the pharmacy section at the back of the store. There was a rear exit there, I remembered, for deliveries. The man in the dark jacket followed at a distance. I approached the pharmacy counter, where a young woman was organizing medications. "Excuse me," I said, pitching my voice to sound frail and confused. "I'm not feeling well. Is there somewhere I could sit down? Maybe a break room?" The pharmacist looked concerned. "Oh, of course. Let me get you some water. There's a chair right through that door. It's our staff area, but you can rest there." She led me through a door marked "Employees Only" into a bland hallway. The break room was small and empty. She brought me water and fussed over me for a moment before returning to her counter. As soon as she left, I moved quickly down the hallway, past storage rooms and offices, until I found the delivery entrance. I pushed through and found myself in a loading area behind the store. Cold rain hit my face. I hurried across the lot to a side street, staying in the shadows. My car was lost for now, but I was free. I walked 3 blocks in the rain before calling a taxi. The driver, a woman in her 30s, barely glanced at me as I gave her the address of a diner near my farm. Once we were moving, I called Thomas back. "Aunt Ruth, where are you? You sound out of breath." "I'm fine. Just had to deal with something." "What did you find?" I pulled Riverside Technologies' corporate structure and recent financial filings. You were right to be suspicious. The company was in the process of being acquired by TechCore International for $350 million. The deal was set to close on December 1st. The fraud investigation killed it. TechCore pulled out yesterday, citing material misrepresentation and financial irregularities. Riverside Technologies' stock has tanked. They've lost over 60% of their market value in 2 days. I processed this, rain streaming down the taxi window. So whoever stole that money wanted to destroy the acquisition, or wanted to buy the company cheap after the acquisition fell through. But here's the interesting part. I looked at who benefits from the acquisition failing. Guess who was going to lose their position if TechCore took over? Tell me. Andrew Wright, Riverside Technologies CEO. TechCore planned to replace him with their own leadership team. He would have gotten a golden parachute, sure, but he'd be out of a job. Now, with the acquisition dead and the company in crisis, the board is begging him to stay and stabilize things. Andrew Wright. The name hit me like a physical blow. Thomas. Andrew Wright is Annette's uncle, her father's brother. Silence on the other end. Then, carefully, that's a significant family connection. My mind raced. Andrew Wright was family. Someone Marcus would have trusted implicitly. Someone with complete access to the financial systems. Someone who could manipulate transactions and make them appear to come from Marcus's accounts. There's more, Thomas continued. I found Marcus's resignation letter in the company's electronic filings. It's dated 3 weeks ago, like Caldwell said. But Aunt Ruth, the resignation wasn't voluntary. It was a forced termination disguised as a resignation. The letter references violations of company policy and ethical concerns. It's a firing, dressed up to avoid a lawsuit. They fired him 3 weeks before accusing him of fraud, which means they were setting him up even then. They needed him out of the company, but still with enough access that transactions could be blamed on him. Classic scapegoat strategy. The taxi pulled up to the diner. I paid the driver and ducked inside, choosing a booth in the back corner where I could watch the door. Thomas, I need you to find out everything you can about Andrew Wright. His finances, his business dealings, anything that might show motive. I'm on it. But Aunt Ruth, if Wright is behind this, he's dangerous. He has resources, connections, power. You can't take him on alone. I'm not taking him on. I'm gathering evidence. There's a difference. After hanging up, I ordered coffee I didn't want and sat thinking. Annette's uncle. Had she known? Was that why they'd fled? Not because Marcus was guilty, but because they'd discovered who was really behind the theft. My phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. Another text. Mom, they found us once. Moving again. Don't go home. They're watching your farm. Annette's uncle is dangerous. Trust no one from her family. The message deleted itself as I watched. So Marcus knew. He knew Andrew Wright was behind this. But how had they found him once already? And how was he sending me these messages that erased themselves? I stared at my coffee, my mind working through the implications. If Wright knew Marcus was onto him, he'd want him silenced permanently. The armed men, the surveillance, it all made terrible sense. But I had a new problem. Marcus warned me not to go home, which meant my farm was being watched. Everything I needed, my files, my computer, my safe place, was there. The diner's bell chimed and I looked up sharply. 2 men in suits entered, scanning the restaurant. Not the same men from earlier, but they had that same predatory awareness. I stood smoothly, left money on the table, and walked toward the restrooms. There was a rear exit through the kitchen. I'd worked in this diner as a teenager, back when it was under different ownership, but the layout was the same. The cook looked up in surprise as I hurried past. Ma'am, you can't— Emergency, I said firmly, pushing through the back door into an alley. I was getting too old for this kind of running, my knees protesting as I jogged to the street. But fear is a powerful motivator. I flagged down another taxi, this one driven by an older man who reminded me of my late husband. Where to? He asked. Where could I go? Not home. Not to any friends who might be under surveillance. Not to family who might unknowingly lead my pursuers to me. The Cedar Falls Public Library, I said finally. The one on Main Street? The library closed at 9, which gave me 30 minutes. I needed to access public computers, do research without leaving a digital trail on my own devices, and I needed to think. The librarian on duty was someone I knew vaguely from church, an efficient woman named Helen who smiled when she saw me. Ruth? Burning the midnight oil with research? Something like that. I need to use a computer if any are available. She set me up at a terminal in the back corner. I logged in using a guest account and started searching. Andrew Wright had an impressive public profile. CEO of Riverside Technologies for 8 years, credited with tripling the company's revenue, respected in the business community. Married, 2 grown children, active in local charities. But when I dug deeper, into business journals and financial news archives, a different picture emerged. 3 years ago, Wright had been accused of insider trading by a competitor. The case settled out of court with no admission of guilt. 5 years ago, a whistleblower from Riverside Technologies had come forward claiming financial irregularities. She'd been discredited and fired, and later withdrew her allegations. A pattern of accusations, quickly buried under settlements and legal maneuvering. I searched for connections between Wright and shell companies, offshore accounts, anything that might link him to the theft. But he was smart. Everything looked legitimate on the surface. Then I found something interesting. A small business news article from 2 months ago, barely a paragraph. Riverside Technologies CEO Andrew Wright declined to comment on rumors of a management buyout attempt following the announcement of TechCore's acquisition offer. A management buyout. Wright had tried to buy the company himself rather than let TechCore acquire it, but he'd failed. The board had accepted TechCore's higher offer, and Wright was about to lose his empire. Unless the acquisition fell apart. Unless massive fraud made TechCore walk away. Unless Wright could buy the company for pennies on the dollar once its value crashed. My hands trembled on the keyboard. This wasn't just about framing Marcus. This was about corporate theft on a massive scale, about a CEO destroying his own company's value to steal it from shareholders and board members. And Marcus had somehow discovered it. I was so focused on my research that I didn't notice the man approaching until he was standing right behind me. Mrs. Spencer. I spun around in my chair. Detective Vasquez stood there, his expression grim but not hostile. Detective, are you following me? No, I'm trying to help you. You need to come with me right now. I'm not going anywhere until you tell me what's happening. He glanced around the library, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. Your farm was broken into 2 hours ago. Someone ransacked it, tore the place apart. The neighbors called it in when they saw lights and heard crashing. My stomach dropped. Was anything taken? That's what we need you to determine. But Mrs. Spencer, this wasn't a normal burglary. They were looking for something specific. They destroyed your computer, went through all your files, even tore up floorboards. They were looking for evidence. Anything Marcus might have sent me. Anything I might have discovered. There's more, Vasquez continued. We ran the prints from your son's house. In addition to the expected family prints, we found multiple unknown individuals, professional criminals, based on their technique. This isn't just about white-collar fraud anymore. There are people involved who are willing to use violence. I know. I've been followed all evening. His eyes sharpened. You what? Why didn't you call me? Because I don't know who to trust. My son is innocent, Detective. He's being framed by someone with power and resources, someone who's hired criminals to hunt him down. Do you have proof of that? I hesitated. The text messages from Marcus were gone, erased. I had no physical evidence, just a growing web of connections and suspicions. Not yet, but I will. Mrs. Spencer, you need protection. Let me put you in a safe house until... No. I stood up, gathering my purse. The moment I'm in protective custody, I lose my freedom to investigate. I lose my ability to help my son. You could lose your life if you keep pursuing this alone. Then that's a risk I'm willing to take. Vasquez's jaw tightened. You're as stubborn as your son. He wouldn't cooperate either the times I met him. Always polite, always friendly, but impossible to convince when he'd made up his mind. Something in his tone caught my attention. You knew Marcus? Before all this? We served on a community board together, fundraising for the youth center. He was a good man. Honest. which is why I'm having a hard time believing he's the mastermind behind an $83 million theft. Vasquez pulled out a business card and pressed it into my hand. My personal cell phone. If you get in trouble, if you find evidence, if you need help, you call me. Day or night. I looked at the card, then at him. Why are you helping me? Because something about this case doesn't sit right. Because I've seen bad guys before, and your son doesn't fit the profile. And because if you're right about someone framing him, that person is still out there, stealing money and destroying lives. The FBI doesn't share your doubts. The FBI is following the evidence they have. I'm following my gut. Sometimes that's just as important. He walked me out of the library to his unmarked car. I'm taking you somewhere safe for the night. Not a safe house, just a hotel under a fake name. Tomorrow we can figure out next steps. As we drove through the dark streets, I stared out the window, thinking about everything I'd learned. Andrew Wright, the CEO with motive and opportunity, the failed acquisition, the destroyed company value, the management buyout attempt, Marcus's forced resignation, and subsequent framing. The pieces were coming together, but I still didn't have concrete proof. Nothing that would stand up in court. Nothing that would clear Marcus's name and bring him home safely. Detective, I said quietly, if I could get evidence proving who really stole that money, would you help me bring them down? If the evidence is solid? Absolutely. Even if it implicated powerful people? Even if it meant going up against a CEO with lawyers and money and connections? Vasquez glanced at me. Mrs. Spencer, I became a cop because I believe in justice. Real justice. Not just what's convenient or politically expedient. If you can prove your son was framed, I don't care who did it. I'll help you expose them. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't completely alone. I had Thomas working on corporate research, and now Detective Vasquez willing to act on solid evidence. But I needed that evidence. And to get it, I was going to have to take risks that terrified me. The hotel was a modest chain on the highway, anonymous and forgettable. Vasquez checked me in under the name Sarah Henderson and walked me to my room. Lock the door, don't open it for anyone but me, and call if you need anything. I'll post a patrol car in the lot, discreet surveillance. After he left, I locked the door and sat on the bed, finally allowing myself to feel the exhaustion and fear I'd been holding back. My phone buzzed one more time. Marcus. Mom, I know you're investigating. Please stop. You're in danger. We're safe for now. Let this play out. I love you. This message didn't delete. I stared at it, tears burning my eyes. Let it play out? Let my son remain a fugitive, hunted and afraid? Let whoever framed him win? No, not while I had breath in my body. I typed back, I love you too, and I'm not stopping until I clear your name. Trust me. The message showed as delivered but not read. Wherever Marcus was, whatever burner phone he was using, he'd see it eventually. And he'd know his mother wasn't giving up. Not now. Not ever. I barely slept that night. Every sound in the hallway made me jump. Every car door slamming in the parking lot sent my heart racing. At dawn, I gave up and called Thomas. Aunt Ruth, it's 6 in the morning. I need you to do something that might cross some ethical lines. A pause. I'm listening. I need Andrew Wright's financial records. Bank statements, investment accounts, any offshore holdings. Can you get them? Not legally, no. Those records are privileged unless we have a court order, and no judge will grant that based on suspicion alone. What about illegally? Thomas exhaled slowly. Are you asking me to commit a crime? I'm asking you to help me save your cousin's life. Marcus is in hiding with an 8-year-old child. People with guns are hunting them. I need evidence, Thomas, and I need it fast. Let me make some calls. I have a colleague who specializes in forensic accounting. He might know ways to access information through legitimate channels, regulatory filings, shareholder reports, things that are public record but buried in technical jargon. How long will that take? A few days? Maybe a week? I don't have a week. Then what do you want me to do, Aunt Ruth? Break into his house? Hack his computer? I'm a lawyer, not a criminal. I rubbed my eyes, frustration mounting. I'm sorry. You're right. I'm just desperate. I know. Look, let me reach out to my forensic accounting contact today. Maybe we'll get lucky and find something in the public records. In the meantime, you need to stay safe. Where are you? A hotel. Detective Vasquez arranged it. Good. Stay there. Don't do anything reckless. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed, thinking. Public records would take too long. I needed something faster, more direct. My phone rang. Carol Wright. Ruth? Have you heard from Annette? Anything at all? No, nothing. Have you? No, and I'm going crazy with worry. The news is saying horrible things about Marcus. They're calling him a criminal mastermind. Her voice broke. Annette would never marry someone like that. She's a good judge of character. I chose my words carefully. Carol, what can you tell me about your brother-in-law? Andrew Wright? Andrew, why? Just trying to understand the situation at Riverside Technologies. Marcus worked closely with the executive team. Andrew's always been successful, smart, ambitious. Annette looks up to him. He helped her get her real estate license, actually. Introduced her to some clients. Carol paused. Why are you asking about Andrew specifically? No particular reason. Just gathering information. But Carol wasn't foolish. Ruth, you don't think Andrew had something to do with this, do you? He's family. He wouldn't frame Marcus. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm just trying to find the truth. Andrew has been very supportive through this crisis. He called me yesterday, said he was heartbroken about what Marcus allegedly did, but he'd do everything he could to help Annette and Trevor if they came forward. A chill ran through me. He said that? That he'd help them if they came forward? Yes. He even offered to hire a lawyer for them, pay for their defense. He's being incredibly generous considering what Marcus supposedly did to his company. Generous. Or calculating. Wright wanted to know where Marcus was. He was using Carol, using Annette's family connection, to try to draw them out. Carol, if Andrew contacts you again, don't tell him anything about my investigation. Don't mention that we've talked about him. Why would I mention, Ruth, what's going on? What do you know? I don't know anything yet. I'm just being cautious. Please trust me on this. After ending the call, I paced the small hotel room. Wright was actively searching for Marcus, using every connection he had. Time was running out. Detective Vasquez called at 8. Mrs. Spencer, I need you to come down to the station. Agent Fisher wants to talk to you again. About what? She didn't say, but it's not optional. She's threatening to issue a material witness warrant if you don't come voluntarily. My stomach nodded. I'll be there in an hour. The police station felt different this time. More hostile, more suspicious. Agent Fisher was waiting in the same interview room, but now another FBI agent sat beside her, a stern man in his 50s with steel gray hair. Mrs. Spencer, this is Special Agent Frank Morrison, Fisher said. He has some questions about your activities yesterday. Morrison opened a folder and slid photographs across the table. Security camera footage, time stamped. Me at the grocery store. Me at the diner. Me at the library. You were very busy yesterday evening, Morrison said. Evading surveillance, using public computers to research corporate finances, meeting secretly with Detective Vasquez. I wasn't evading surveillance. I was running errands. You ditched your car at a grocery store and fled through a delivery entrance. That's not running errands, Mrs. Spencer. That's the behavior of someone who knows they're being watched. I felt unsafe. There were men following me. What men? I don't know who they were. Men in a dark sedan, following me from my son's house. Morrison and Fisher exchanged glances. We have no record of any surveillance on you except our own periodic checks on your location. Then they weren't federal agents. They were someone else. Who? Morrison leaned forward. Who would be following you, Mrs. Spencer? Unless you're involved in your son's criminal activities and his associates are keeping tabs on you. I'm not involved in anything criminal. I'm trying to find my family. By researching Andrew Wright? Fisher tapped one of the photographs, a screenshot of my library computer screen. We pulled your search history. You spent 90 minutes researching Riverside Technologies' CEO. Why? I met her eyes steadily. Because I think he's involved in the fraud, and my son is being framed. Morrison actually laughed. Andrew Wright? He's the victim here. His company has been destroyed by your son's theft. He's lost hundreds of millions in market value. Or he orchestrated that destruction himself so he could buy the company cheap after the acquisition fell through. Fisher's expression hardened. Do you have any evidence to support this theory? Not yet, but I will. Let me make something very clear, Mrs. Spencer. Morrison's voice turned cold. Andrew Wright is a respected business leader with political connections at the state and federal level. If you go around making baseless accusations against him, you'll find yourself facing defamation lawsuits that will destroy you financially. Do you understand? The threat was unmistakable. Wright had friends in the FBI, or at least enough influence to send agents to warn off anyone who got too close to the truth. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. Furthermore, Fisher added, if you have any contact with your son, you are legally obligated to report it to us. Failure to do so makes you an accessory to his flight from justice. That's a federal crime, Mrs. Spencer. You could go to prison. I haven't had contact with him. Your phone records suggest otherwise. We've detected encrypted messages sent to your device from untraceable sources. Sophisticated technology, the kind someone might use if they were trying to evade law enforcement. My heart sank. They'd been monitoring my phone. They knew Marcus had contacted me, even if they couldn't read the messages. I don't know anything about encrypted messages, I said. I'm 63 years old. I barely know how to use text messaging. Morrison smiled without warmth. Don't play the confused grandmother card, Mrs. Spencer. We've been watching you. You're sharper than you pretend to be, and that makes you dangerous, to yourself and to your son. Is that a threat? It's a warning. Stop investigating Andrew Wright. Stop trying to create alternative theories about this case. Your son stole $83 million. The evidence is overwhelming. When we catch him, and we will catch him, he's going to prison for a very long time. The only question is whether you'll be in the cell next to him. They let me go after another hour of interrogation, but the message was clear. Back off or face consequences. Detective Vasquez was waiting in the lobby. That looked intense. They threatened me, told me to stop investigating Wright, which probably means you're on to something. He guided me toward the exit. But you need to be smart about this, Mrs. Spencer. The FBI has resources you can't compete with. If they're protecting Wright, you won't be able to touch him through official channels. Then I'll have to use unofficial ones. Vasquez stopped walking. Be very careful what you're saying. I'm a cop. I can't condone illegal activity. Then don't listen. I pushed through the doors into the cold morning air. My phone buzzed. Thomas. Found something. Can you meet? Not your house, somewhere public. I texted back. Cedar Falls Park, by the gazebo. 1 hour. Vasquez offered to drive me, but I declined. I needed to think, to plan. I took a taxi to the park, arriving early, watching for anyone suspicious. Thomas showed up precisely on time, carrying a briefcase and looking nervous. We sat on a bench overlooking the frozen pond. I found irregularities, he said without preamble. My forensic accountant colleague ran Riverside Technologies' SEC filings through analysis software. There are discrepancies between what the company reported in their quarterly statements and what they filed with the State Regulatory Commission. What kind of discrepancies? Revenue recognition issues. The company claimed certain contracts and sales that don't appear in the state filings. It's technical, but basically, someone was inflating revenue numbers to make the company look more valuable than it actually was. To increase the acquisition price? Exactly. TechCore based their $350 million offer on revenue figures that were at least partially fabricated. When the fraud came to light, TechCore discovered they'd been about to overpay by maybe $100 million. I processed this. So Wright was committing fraud before Marcus ever got involved. He was cooking the books to inflate the acquisition price. That's what it looks like. But here's where it gets interesting. The fabricated revenue entries all have digital signatures and approval codes. My colleague traced them. They were authorized using Marcus's credentials. But Marcus didn't create them. Right. Someone with administrative access used Marcus's credentials to create false entries. Then, when the fraud investigation started, Marcus looked like the culprit. Can we prove someone else used his credentials? Thomas grimaced. That's the hard part. The access logs show Marcus's username and password. Unless we can prove his credentials were stolen or duplicated, it looks like he did it. There has to be a way to prove it wasn't him. There might be. Digital forensics can sometimes detect patterns, typing speed, navigation habits, timing of entries. If someone else was using Marcus's credentials, they might have left subtle fingerprints in how they interacted with the system. Would the FBI look for that? Not if they're already convinced Marcus is guilty. They'd need a reason to dig deeper, and your testimony alone isn't enough. I stood up, frustration boiling over. So, we have evidence of fraud before the theft. Evidence that Marcus's credentials were used to commit that fraud, but no way to prove he wasn't the one using his own credentials. Not yet. But Aunt Ruth, there's something else. My colleague noticed that the shell companies used to steal the $83 million were incorporated in Delaware, using a registered agent service. He did some creative research, called the service claiming to represent one of the companies, asked about updating contact information, and the original incorporation documents were filed by a law firm that Andrew Wright has used for personal business dealings. Not his corporate attorneys, but a smaller firm he employs for private matters. That's it. That's the connection. It's circumstantial, not enough for a warrant or an indictment, but it's a thread. If we pull on it, we might unravel more. A car pulled into the parking lot. A dark sedan, similar to the one that had followed me yesterday. 2 men got out, both wearing suits. Thomas, we need to leave, now. We walked quickly toward his car, parked on the opposite side of the gazebo. The men followed at a distance, not running, but definitely tracking us. Who are they? Thomas asked nervously. I don't know, but I've seen men like them before. Get in your car and drive. Don't stop. Don't look back. What about you? I'll be fine. Go. Thomas hesitated, then got in his car and drove away. I walked briskly toward the street, where a public bus was approaching. I flagged it down and climbed aboard just as the 2 men reached the curb. Through the window, I watched them return to their sedan, frustrated. I rode the bus to a shopping district, then took another taxi to a different hotel. I couldn't keep running forever, but I needed time to think, to plan my next move. In my new hotel room, I laid out everything I knew. Wright had committed fraud to inflate the acquisition price. He'd used Marcus's credentials to create false revenue entries. When the acquisition was about to proceed, he'd stolen $83 million using shell companies connected to his personal law firm. The theft killed the acquisition, destroyed the company's value, and positioned Wright to buy it cheap. Marcus had discovered something. Maybe the false revenue entries, maybe the theft itself. And Wright had fired him, then framed him for the entire scheme. But I still couldn't prove any of it, not in a way that would convince the FBI or clear Marcus's name. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Mrs. Spencer, we need to talk. The voice was male, smooth, confident. This is Andrew Wright. My blood turned to ice. I understand you've been asking questions about me, he continued. Making accusations. That's unfortunate. I was hoping we could resolve this situation amicably. I have nothing to say to you. I think you do. You see, I know where Marcus is. Or rather, I know where he was 6 hours ago. A motel in Council Bluffs, registered under a fake name. He's been moving every day, trying to stay ahead of the authorities. You're lying. Am I? He's driving a blue Honda Civic with Nebraska plates. Annette dyed her hair brown. Trevor has a stuffed dinosaur he carries everywhere. Shall I go on? Terror gripped me. He knew. He'd found them. What do you want? I want you to stop investigating me. Stop talking to lawyers. Stop researching my business. Stop making trouble. In exchange, I'll give your son 48 hours to get further away before I anonymously tip off the FBI to his location. But why would you do that? Because I'm not a monster, Mrs. Spencer. I'm a businessman. Marcus made mistakes, got in over his head. I don't want to see his family destroyed. But I also can't have you undermining the investigation and creating conspiracy theories that damage my reputation. You framed him. You stole that money and blamed my son. Right side. Believe what you want. But here's the reality. The FBI has evidence that Marcus is guilty. That evidence will hold up in court. If he goes to trial, he'll be convicted and spend the rest of his life in prison. Is that what you want for him? I want the truth. The truth is that your son made very poor choices, and now he's paying for them. The best thing you can do is convince him to turn himself in and cooperate. He might get a reduced sentence, maybe 15 years instead of 30. Trevor would still have a father before he's an adult. You're a liar and a thief. I'm his only hope, Mrs. Spencer. Think about it. You have until tomorrow morning to decide. Stop investigating or I make the call to the FBI. Your choice. He hung up. I sat on the bed, shaking. Wright had found Marcus. He was threatening to turn him in unless I backed off. But if I stopped investigating, Marcus would never be cleared. He'd live as a fugitive forever, or eventually be caught and imprisoned for crimes he didn't commit. There had to be another way. Some evidence I could find, some proof I could uncover before tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mom, don't listen to him. We moved an hour ago. He's bluffing. Keep fighting. We believe in you. I stared at the message until it deleted itself. Marcus was counting on me. My grandson was out there, scared and hiding, believing his grandmother could save them. I couldn't let them down. Tomorrow morning. That's all the time I had. And I was going to make it count. I didn't sleep. I couldn't afford to. Instead, I sat at the hotel desk with a notepad, mapping out everything I knew, every connection, every piece of evidence. By 3 a.m, I had a plan. It was risky, possibly illegal, and would require perfect timing. But it was the only option I had left. At 6, I called Detective Vasquez. Mrs. Spencer, it's barely dawn. I need your help. Today, right now. What's happened? Andrew Wright called me last night. He threatened to turn Marcus into the FBI unless I stopped investigating him. He gave me until this morning to decide. Vasquez was silent for a moment. That's obstruction of justice, possibly witness tampering. Can you arrest him for it? Not without a recording of the conversation. It's your word against his. Then I need to get him to repeat it. On record. How? I'm going to confront him. Face to face. But I'll need you there as backup. And I'll need you to trust me even when it looks like I'm doing something reckless. Mrs. Spencer, please, this is my only chance to save my son. Another pause. Tell me your plan. I laid it out for him, every detail. When I finished, he let out a low whistle. That's either brilliant or insane. Can you help me? Against my better judgment, yes. But if this goes wrong, I can't protect you from the consequences. I understand. By 8 a.m, I was standing outside Riverside Technologies' corporate headquarters. The building looked different in daylight, less sinister, just another office complex full of people going about their daily work, oblivious to the corruption at the top. I walked into the lobby with my head high, every inch the concerned family member seeking answers. The same security guard from before looked up in surprise. Mrs. Spencer? Ma'am, I told you, you can't. I'm not here to see my son's office. I'm here to see Andrew Wright. I have an appointment. I didn't, of course. But I'd gambled that Wright would see me if I showed up in person. He thought he had control of this situation. He thought he'd successfully intimidated me. He had no idea what I was capable of. The guard made a phone call, spoke quietly, then looked at me with a mixture of confusion and respect. Mr. Wright will see you. 10th floor, executive suite. I rode the elevator up, my heart pounding but my hands steady. I'd pinned a small recording device to the inside of my coat collar, one Thomas had borrowed from his investigator friend. It was running, capturing everything. The executive suite was all glass and chrome, expensive art on the walls, panoramic views of Riverside. Wright's assistant, a polished woman in her 30s, gestured to a leather chair. Mr. Wright will be with you in a moment. Can I get you coffee? Water? No, thank you. I sat, forcing myself to breathe slowly. This had to work. I had one chance to get Wright talking, to get him to admit enough on recording that Detective Vasquez could act. The office door opened. Andrew Wright walked out, hand extended, smile warm and practiced. He was in his late 50s, silver-haired and distinguished, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Mrs. Spencer, I'm glad you came. Please, Let's talk in my office. I followed him into a space that screamed power. Massive desk, floor-to-ceiling windows, photographs of Wright shaking hands with politicians and celebrities. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. I assume you've considered my offer? I have. But I have questions first. Wright leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. Of course. Why Marcus? Of all the employees you could have framed, why my son? His expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. I'm not sure what you mean. Yes, you are. You used his credentials to falsify revenue reports. You set up shell companies through your personal law firm to steal $83 million. You engineered the entire scheme to destroy the TechCore acquisition so you could buy Riverside Technologies at a fraction of its value. And you made Marcus the scapegoat. Wright studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. You're smarter than I gave you credit for. Answer my question. Why Marcus? He stood and walked to the window, hands in his pockets. Because he was perfect. Smart enough to be believable as a mastermind, but not experienced enough to cover his tracks properly. He had access to the right systems, the right accounts, and most importantly, he trusted me. Because your family, his wife's uncle. Exactly. When I asked him to run special reports, to check unusual transactions, to test security protocols, he never questioned it. He kept providing access for routine security checks whenever I asked, Wright said, his expression tightening. With credentials like that floating around, it was simple to make the wrong person look responsible. My hands clenched in my lap, but I kept my voice calm. And when he discovered what you'd done, he found irregularities in the revenue reports 3 weeks ago. Started asking questions, digging into files he shouldn't have accessed. I couldn't have that. So I fired him, made it look like he'd violated company policy. That way, when the fraud came to light, everyone would assume he'd been terminated for cause. You destroyed his life. I protected my company. The TechCore acquisition would have gutted everything I built. They would have dismantled Riverside, sold off divisions, laid off hundreds of employees. I spent 8 years building this company into a regional powerhouse. I wasn't going to let some Silicon Valley corporation tear it apart for spare parts. So you committed fraud and theft. Wright shrugged. I repositioned assets. The money isn't gone, Mrs. Spencer. It's safely invested offshore, waiting for the right moment. Once Riverside's stock price bottoms out, I'll use those funds to execute a management buyout. I'll take the company private, restructure it, and rebuild. In 5 years, Riverside will be worth twice what TechCore was offering. And my son goes to prison for your crimes. Your son should have minded his own business. Wright's voice hardened. He could have stayed quiet, kept his job, continued his comfortable life. Instead, he had to play hero. Well, heroes in the real world don't win, Mrs. Spencer. They just get crushed by people smarter and more powerful than they are. People like you. Exactly like me. He returned to his desk, sitting down. Which brings us back to my offer. You stop investigating, I give Marcus time to run. It's a fair deal. And if I refuse, then I make one phone call and the FBI raids whatever motel he's hiding in within the hour. Annette goes to prison as an accessory. Trevor goes into foster care. Is that what you want? I met his eyes steadily. You're bluffing. You don't know where Marcus is. Don't I? Wright opened his desk drawer and pulled out a photograph, sliding it across to me. My breath caught. It was recent. Marcus, Annette, and Trevor walking into a small motel, taken from a distance. Trevor clutched his stuffed dinosaur. The timestamp was from yesterday. I have resources you can't imagine, Wright said quietly. Private investigators, former intelligence operatives, people who find other people for a living. Your son can't hide from me. I stared at the photograph, fear and rage warring inside me. But I'd expected this. I'd planned for this. Then I guess I have no choice, I said softly. I'll stop investigating. Wright smiled. A wise decision. On one condition. His smile faded slightly. You're not in a position to negotiate. I want proof Marcus is safe. I want to talk to him, hear his voice. Know that you haven't already hurt him. I told you, I'm not a monster. He's fine. Then prove it. Call whoever's watching him. Let me speak to my son. Wright considered this. Fine, if it'll make you feel better. He pulled out his phone and made a call. It's me. Put Spencer on the line. He activated the speakerphone and set it on the desk between us. A moment later, Marcus's voice came through, tense and frightened. Hello? Marcus, it's Mom. Are you okay? Is Trevor safe? Mom? What's going on? Why are you— I need to know you're safe. We're fine. We're at a motel and— Don't tell me where, I interrupted. I just needed to hear your voice. Mom, what's happening? What are you doing? Before I could answer, Wright ended the call. Satisfied? Yes. I stood up. Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Wright. I'll stop my investigation as we agreed. I turned toward the door, every nerve in my body screaming. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Mrs. Spencer, Wright called. One more thing. The recording device you're wearing. I'll need you to leave it here. My blood turned to ice. I turned back slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. Wright stood, his smile now cold and predatory. Please. You think I'd confess to fraud and theft without checking for surveillance? The moment you sat down, my security system scanned you. You're carrying a wireless transmitter on your collar. Take it off and place it on my desk. My mind raced. The recording device was my only evidence, my only proof of everything he'd admitted. Without it, I had nothing. Now, Mrs. Spencer, or I make that call to the FBI immediately. With trembling hands, I reached for my collar and unpinned the device. It was small, no bigger than a button. I placed it on his desk. Wright picked it up, examined it, then crushed it under his heel. Did you really think you could outsmart me? I've been playing this game since before you were born. You won't get away with this. I already have. He pulled out his phone. And now I'm going to have to move up my timeline. I can't have you running around loose, telling people your little theories. The FBI already knows I suspect you. And they dismissed you as a desperate mother making wild accusations. No, Mrs. Spencer, you're not a threat to me. You're just an annoyance that needs to be managed. He began dialing. The office door burst open. Detective Vasquez strode in, 3 uniformed officers behind him. Andrew Wright, you're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, obstruction of justice, and witness tampering. Wright's face went white. What? You can't— I have lawyers. Save it for your arraignment. Vasquez pulled out handcuffs. I backed against the wall, relief flooding through me. Behind the officers, Agent Fisher walked in, her expression grim but satisfied. We heard everything, Mr. Wright, she said. We already had a quiet internal review open on you, so when Mrs. Spencer approached us, we wired her purse with the real transmitter and monitored your conversation from the lobby. Wright's eyes swung to me, fury and disbelief warring on his face. You set me up. I gave you a chance to do the right thing, I said quietly. You chose confession instead. As Vasquez cuffed him and read him his rights, Wright struggled against the officers. This is entrapment, illegal surveillance. My lawyers will destroy this case. Agent Fisher shook her head. You confessed voluntarily to a civilian. No coercion, no entrapment. And that phone call you made? We traced it. We now have the location of your surveillance team and evidence of harassment and stalking. That photograph you showed Mrs. Spencer? That's evidence of criminal conspiracy. They led Wright out of his office in handcuffs. Employees gathered in the hallway, staring in shock as their CEO was perp-walked past them. I sagged against the wall, suddenly exhausted. Detective Vasquez returned a moment later. You did good, Mrs. Spencer. That was incredibly brave and incredibly reckless. Did you get enough? More than enough. His admission about using Marcus's credentials, falsifying reports, setting up shell companies, that's everything we need to clear your son's name and build a case against Wright. Agent Fisher approached, her expression softer than I'd ever seen it. Mrs. Spencer, I owe you an apology. I should have listened when you said your son was being framed. You were following the evidence you had. Still, I let Wright's reputation and connections cloud my judgment. That won't happen again. She pulled out her phone. I'm issuing a directive right now to halt all law enforcement efforts to locate Marcus Spencer. As of this moment, he's no longer a fugitive. Tell him he can come home. Tears stung my eyes. Thank you. Thank you. You did our job for us. Outside Riverside Technologies, news crews were already gathering. alerted by the police scanner traffic. I watched from a window as they set up cameras, preparing to broadcast the fall of a local business titan. My phone buzzed. Marcus. Mom, we saw the news alert. Is it true? Did they arrest Wright? I typed back with shaking hands. It's true. It's over. Come home. You're safe now. Are you sure? I'm sure. The FBI apologized. All charges against you will be dropped. Come home, sweetheart. Bring your family home. We're 3 hours away. We'll leave right now. Mom, I don't know how you did it, but thank you. You saved us. I closed my eyes, letting the relief wash over me. My grandson would sleep in his own bed tonight. My son would be free. Justice, real justice, had won. Detective Vasquez touched my shoulder gently. I'll drive you to the station. You'll need to give a formal statement, and then we'll coordinate with the FBI to set up a time for Marcus to turn over any evidence he gathered. He gathered evidence? He mentioned it in that phone call. He said he was at a motel collecting documents. I'm guessing he's been building his own case against Wright this whole time. I smiled. That's my son. Always thinking ahead. As we walked through the lobby, employees whispered and stared. I held my head high. Let them stare. Let them see that a grandmother, dismissed and underestimated by everyone, had brought down a corrupt CEO through nothing more than determination and intelligence. Outside, the cold November air felt clean and fresh. The nightmare was ending. My family was coming home. But I knew the fight wasn't completely over. There would be trials, testimony, media scrutiny. Wright had lawyers and money and connections. He'd fight back with everything he had. But so would I. And I'd already proven who was smarter. 3 hours felt like an eternity. I gave my statement at the police station, answering questions from Agent Fisher and a team of federal prosecutors who would be building the case against Wright. They were efficient, thorough, and for the first time, truly listening to what I had to say. Mrs. Spencer, you mentioned that Marcus discovered irregularities in the revenue reports 3 weeks ago, one prosecutor asked. Do you know if he documented what he found? He's always been meticulous about record keeping. If he found something suspicious, he would have saved evidence. That will be crucial for our case. The defense will argue that Wright's confession was coerced or that he was speaking hypothetically. We need concrete proof of the fraud. You'll have it, I said with certainty. My son doesn't run from problems. He runs toward solutions. By the time they finished, it was early afternoon. Detective Vasquez drove me to my farm so I could finally see the damage from the break-in. The drive through familiar countryside should have been comforting, but my stomach knotted as we approached. The farmhouse looked violated. The front door hung crooked on its hinges where they'd forced it open. Inside was worse. Furniture overturned, drawers dumped out, cushions slashed open. My computer lay in pieces on the kitchen floor. Family photographs had been torn from frames, as if the intruders thought I might hide evidence behind them. I'm sorry, Vasquez said quietly. I know this is your home. I walked through the destruction, touching things that had been part of my life for decades. My grandmother's china cabinet, knocked over and shattered. Robert's favorite reading chair, slashed to ribbons. The quilt I'd made when Marcus was born, thrown in a corner and trampled. But they were just things. Things could be replaced or repaired. My family was safe, and that was all that mattered. I'll help you clean up, Vasquez offered. Thank you, but I'd rather wait. When Marcus gets here, we'll do it together. As a family. My phone rang. Carol Wright. I stepped onto the porch to take the call. Hello, Carol. Ruth, I just heard about Andrew's arrest. I can't believe it. I mean, I can believe it, but I can't. This is my brother-in-law. My family. Her voice broke. Did he really try to frame Marcus? Did he really steal all that money? Yes. I'm sorry, Carol. I know this must be devastating. I feel like such a fool. He called me yesterday asking about Annette, trying to find out where she might go. I thought he was being helpful. I almost told him about her college roommate in Council Bluffs. She sobbed. I almost let him write to them. But you didn't. They're safe, and they're coming home. Annette must hate me. My own family tried to destroy her husband. Annette knows you had nothing to do with this. You're a victim too, Carol. Wright manipulated everyone. We talked for a few more minutes, her grief and shame pouring out. I understood her pain. Betrayal by family cuts deepest of all. When we hung up, I felt a strange mixture of vindication and sadness. Justice had been served, but the cost was high. Relationships broken, trust shattered, a family torn apart by greed. At 4:30, a blue Honda Civic pulled into my driveway. I was sitting on the porch swing, waiting, my heart in my throat. The car stopped, and Marcus emerged first, thinner than I remembered. Exhaustion etched into his face. Then Annette, her hair badly dyed brown, eyes red from crying. And finally Trevor, clutching his stuffed dinosaur, looking small and scared. I stood up, and Trevor broke free from his mother's hand and ran to me. "Grandma!" I caught him in my arms, holding him tight, breathing in the little boy smell of him, shampoo and sunshine and something uniquely Trevor. "Hi, sweetheart. I missed you so much." "I missed you too. We had to stay in yucky motels and I couldn't go to school and Mom cried all the time and Dad said we had to be very quiet and I was so scared, Grandma." "I know, baby. I know. But it's over now. You're safe." Marcus approached slowly, his eyes welling with tears. "Mom, I released Trevor and pulled my son into a fierce hug. He collapsed against me, 6 feet tall and still my little boy, shaking with emotion. "You saved us," he whispered. "They told me what you did, how you faced Wright alone, how you got him to confess. Mom, you were amazing." I was a mother protecting her child. That's what mothers do. Annette joined us, and we stood there on the porch, a family reunited, holding each other while Trevor wrapped his arms around all of us. When we finally pulled apart, Marcus saw the damaged door, and his face darkened. "They broke in?" "Wright's people, looking for evidence. It's just property damage. Nothing that can't be fixed. I'll fix it all. I promise. His voice cracked. "I'll make this right. You already have. Come inside. Let me make you something to eat. You all look like you haven't had a decent meal in days." The kitchen was a mess, but the stove still worked. I made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, comfort food from Marcus's childhood. We sat around the kitchen table. I'd set it back upright. And for a while, we just ate in silence. Then Marcus began to talk. "I discovered the false revenue entries 6 weeks ago," he said. "I was running routine audit checks and noticed discrepancies. At first, I thought it was just data entry errors. But when I dug deeper, I found a pattern. Someone with high-level access was systematically inflating our sales numbers." "And you confronted Wright?" I asked. "Not at first. I thought maybe it was a board member or another executive. I started documenting everything, making copies of files, tracking the digital signatures. That's when I realized the entries were being made with my credentials." He looked at Annette. I panicked. I knew how it would look. Annette took his hand. "He came home that night and told me everything. We didn't know what to do. I went to Wright," Marcus continued. "He was my boss, Annette's uncle, someone I trusted. I showed him what I'd found and asked if there might be a security breach. He seemed concerned, told me he'd investigate. The next day, I was fired. "He needed you out of the company before the theft," I said. Marcus nodded. "I didn't realize it then, but yes. Once I was terminated, I no longer had legitimate access to the systems. But my credentials were still active for a transition period. Standard procedure. Wright used that window to execute the $83 million theft using my login." "And you ran when the FBI came?" "An agent I knew from that community board called me unofficially," Marcus said. "Told me I was about to be arrested, that the evidence against me looked overwhelming. He suggested I get a lawyer immediately. But I knew what Wright had done. I knew he'd framed me perfectly. So I grabbed Annette and Trevor and we disappeared. That was the right choice," I said firmly. "If you'd been arrested, you'd be in jail right now, and Wright would still be free." I hated running, hated putting Annette and Trevor through that. But I spent the past 2 weeks gathering evidence. I contacted former employees who'd noticed irregularities. I accessed cloud backups of files I'd saved. I built a timeline of every fraudulent transaction, every falsified report. He pulled a thumb drive from his pocket and placed it on the table. "Everything's on here. Proof that Wright orchestrated the entire scheme. The prosecutors will have what they need to convict him." "Good," I said. "But Marcus, you need to understand something. This isn't over. Wright will fight back. He has expensive lawyers and powerful friends. I know, but we're not running anymore. We're going to face this head-on, as a family. Annette squeezed his hand. I still can't believe my own uncle did this. That he used our relationship, our trust, to destroy Marcus. People do terrible things for money and power, I said. But they underestimate what people will do for family. Trevor had been quiet through most of this, eating his soup, listening to the adults talk. Now he looked up at me with those serious 8-year-old eyes. Grandma, are the bad men going to come back? No, sweetheart. The bad men are in jail. You're safe now. Promise? I promise. Over the following days, our lives began to normalize. Marcus met with federal prosecutors, turning over his evidence. The thumb drive contained thousands of documents, emails, transaction records, audit trails, even recordings of conversations with Wright where the CEO had inadvertently revealed details of his scheme. Your son is a meticulous record keeper, one prosecutor told me. With his testimony and documentation, we have enough to put Wright away for 20 to 30 years. The media coverage was intense. Andrew Wright's arrest dominated local and national news. Reporters called constantly, requesting interviews. I declined them all. This wasn't about fame or attention. This was about justice. Thomas helped Marcus navigate the legal complexities, working pro bono because family takes care of family. Carol Wright, despite her devastation over her brother-in-law's crimes, stood by Annette, proving that not all family connections were tainted by Andrew's actions. Agent Fisher personally delivered the official letter clearing Marcus of all charges. She met with us at the farm where Marcus, Annette, Trevor, and I sat together in my living room. Cleaned now, furniture repaired, the worst damage erased. On behalf of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, I apologize for the distress our investigation caused your family, Fisher said formally. Our analysis of the evidence you provided, combined with Mr. Wright's confession, conclusively proves your innocence. Thank you, Marcus said quietly. We'll need you to testify at trial, but beyond that, you're free to resume your normal life. The FBI will begin the process of issuing a public statement exonerating you, but it may take some time before everything becomes officially public. After she left, we sat in silence for a moment. Then Trevor asked, Does this mean I can go back to school? We all laughed, the tension breaking. Yes, sweetie, Annette said. You can go back to school on Monday. Do I have to tell people what happened? Marcus exchanged glances with Annette and me. You can tell them the truth, that someone lied about your dad, but your grandma helped prove he was innocent, and that sometimes doing the right thing means being brave even when you're scared. That night, after Marcus's family had gone to their repaired house, I sat on my porch watching the sunset. The November air was cold, promising snow soon, but I felt warm inside. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Mom, I never said thank you properly. You risked everything for us. You faced down federal agents, corporate criminals, and armed thugs. You're the bravest person I know. I smiled and typed back, I'm just a mother who loves her son. That's all. No, you're a warrior, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of you. Tears blurred my vision. You already are. Now go hug your wife and son and start rebuilding your life. That's all I want. I love you, Mom. I love you too. 2 months later, I attended Andrew Wright's arraignment. He stood before the judge in an orange jumpsuit, his expensive lawyers flanking him, his face haggard and aged. He'd been denied bail. Flight risk, the judge ruled. The $83 million had been recovered from offshore accounts, frozen and returned to Riverside Technologies. As the judge read the charges, 43 counts of fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering. Wright's eyes found mine across the courtroom. I met his gaze steadily, without triumph or gloating. Just quiet certainty that justice had been served. His lawyers entered a plea of not guilty, but everyone knew it was futile. The evidence was overwhelming. The trial, when it came, would be a formality. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. One thrust a microphone at me. Mrs. Spencer, how does it feel to have taken down one of Iowa's most powerful businessmen? I considered the question. I didn't take anyone down. I simply refused to let an innocent man be destroyed by lies. Any mother would do the same. But you outsmarted federal agents, evaded surveillance, conducted your own investigation. I'm 63 years old, I interrupted gently. Society tends to dismiss older women as harmless, simple, past our prime. Andrew Wright made that mistake. He saw a grandmother and assumed I was no threat. He forgot that age brings wisdom, experience, and a lifetime of learning how to solve problems. What would you say to other older people who feel invisible or powerless? I smiled. That being underestimated is sometimes the greatest advantage. People reveal things to those they don't take seriously. They make mistakes around those they don't fear. Your age, your appearance, your quiet demeanor, these can be tools if you're smart enough to use them. That evening, I hosted Sunday dinner at my farm, a tradition I'd maintained for 40 years. Marcus and Annette brought Trevor. Thomas came with his wife and children. Even Carol Wright attended, hesitant at first, but welcomed warmly. We gathered around my dining room table, now fully repaired, laden with roast chicken and mashed potatoes and green beans from my garden. Trevor said grace, his child's voice earnest and sweet. As we ate, I looked around the table at these people I loved. My son, cleared and vindicated, rebuilding his career with a new company that valued his integrity. My daughter-in-law, stronger now, having weathered a storm that would have broken many marriages. My grandson, resilient and healing, his nightmares fading. This was what I'd fought for. Not revenge, not glory, but this. A Sunday dinner with family, laughter and conversation, normalcy and love. "What are you thinking about, Mom?" Marcus asked, noticing my expression. "I'm thinking that I'm grateful," I said, "for family, for justice, for the chance to prove that intelligence and determination matter more than power or money." "You proved more than that," Thomas said. "You proved that a mother's love is the most powerful force in the world." I raised my water glass. To family, to truth, and to never underestimating a grandmother. They raised their glasses, echoing the toast, and we drank together. Outside my windows, the first snow of the season began to fall, soft and clean, covering the world in white. A new beginning, a fresh start. And in my heart, I felt a peace I hadn't known in months. The battle was over. My family was safe. And I had learned something profound about myself. That at 63 I was stronger, smarter, and more capable than I'd ever imagined. Age wasn't a weakness. It was a weapon, wielded by those wise enough to understand its power. And I would never forget that lesson. Now tell me, what would you have done if you were in my place? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching. And don't forget to check out the video on your screen right now. I'm sure it will surprise you.